Fateful message. A mysterious fortune. My goodness, why on earth do they have such a small parking lot? I thought to myself as I frantically circled around looking for a spot in the lot of a random medical complex in Phoenix. It was in the middle of the day and jam-packed. Don't people have better things to do? Apparently not. I continued complaining to myself, annoyed that my flexible schedule as a self-employed person didn't afford me the freedom I had expected in this relatively mundane errand. But the real issue was actually something else. I just didn't want to park the car valet. Yes, I see the bright orange sign, and no, thank you. I'm not going to shell out money for something I can do myself, let alone be that person that can't even take a little walk if I have to. Keep searching, keep circling, nothing. At one moment, I just stopped, leaned forward, and rested on my wheel. Looking outward around the lot, I saw the two guys working the valet stand hanging out and talking to one another. One of them was a kid of about maybe 17, and the other was an older guy around his 40s. I pondered the situation. Do I have the money? Of course I do. I've got a ton of money. Heck, I have more money now than I've ever had in my life. Not like it's a lot either, but it's still a lot more than I ever had before. Still, I just can't get myself to do the valet. It's the principle of the thing. I looked around for any hope of a spot. Nothing. I sighed and slowly began pulling up to the valet. How much for the valet? I asked. Oh, no, sir, the older man replied happily. The valet is complimentary for this lot. Here, let me take your car. He was a nice Latino man, well-mannered and outstandingly friendly. He'd probably worked there a long time, and definitely he was the one in charge between the two. Yeah, but don't we have to tip you, though? I know, it was rude, but my inner cheapskate wanted to be clear on what exactly complimentary meant. Chuckling softly, my momentary friend quickly replied, No, sir, that's totally up to you. This service is complimentary for all patients visiting the building. Don't worry, you don't have to tip us if you don't want to. Here, let me take your car. Well, I guess I'm off the hook, I thought, and with that out of the way, I grabbed my phone, left in the car, and proceeded forward into the exciting errand of getting my blood drawn. Some ordinary moments passed, and after getting drained of what felt like half of my body weight in blood, I exited the sterile building and began making my way back out to the valet stand. Then another dilemma sprang forth. Do I actually tip the guy? It was complimentary, after all. Technically, it's their problem for having such a small lot to begin with and forcing us poor patients into a guilt trip. It's understood if I don't give anything, right? Even if I were to tip the guy, it would only be like a few bucks. I double-checked my wallet. I had a $100 bill and a $10 bill. No way am I going to give him $100. And 10? That's a hefty tip for not doing very much. I wish I had a few bucks to throw at this guilt. It'll be awkward asking him for change. What to do, what to do. As the battle in my conscience raged on, I took a detour and cut through some rocks. It's okay, I reminded myself. Sidewalks are guidelines, not rules. Within 2 or 3 steps of my new route, something caught my eye. A tiny piece of paper poking its head through some of the cracks. No way, I said out loud. It can't be. I swear, if this is a fortune... I looked up at the sky. It was a nice day out. Slightly overcast. A lovely day outside of the 8 months of hell on earth we endure in Phoenix. If you're going to send me a fortune about this business, then you've got some sense of humor, I called out to the heavens in challenge. Part of me was actually excited to see if the piece of paper was indeed a fortune, let alone one that was relevant to the situation, because that'd be pretty awesome. Similar things had happened to me in the past, on numerous occasions, and they had left me with the overall impression that there's a bit of humor, along with plenty of mystery, in the happenings that we generally brush off as ordinary moments. Like my decision to cut through the rocks that day, as I debated what to do with my money for the valet. Now, you may be wondering what this mysterious fortune said, and you will know in a short while, but how I knew it was a fortune is also an important detail. Nearly every day I would make myself a cup of a particular brand of tea. The tea was good, but nothing crazy. I like tea in general, so I'm easy to please. What sold this brand to me, though, was that each tea bag came with these little fortunes that would come attached to the end of the string. Today I could care less for these things, but at the time I loved that kind of stuff because I placed my trust in the wrong areas, following omens and signs and coincidences rather than using the objective standard of God's word to judge situations rightly. But my foolishness wasn't going to stop God from using such foolish things to draw me closer to Him, and that's really the point here. In either case, my selective attention and tea drinking habit made me immediately recognize that the piece of paper on my detour through the rocks was indeed a fortune, and it appeared at the most appropriate time and with the most appropriate thing to say. The choice and the life lesson. So now, having been stopped dead in my tracks by what I recognized was for sure a beat-up old teabag fortune, I considered what might ensue next. Lord, please don't ask me to give him $100, I said to myself as I stared at the little corner poking its head out of the ground. Here we go. Bending down slowly, I moved aside a few rocks and, sure enough, it was a tea fortune. How it got there, stayed there, and said what it said will forever be a mystery to me, but one that I will enjoy as the inspiration for this little book on gratitude. If we give happiness to others, we will end up happy, it read. I can't believe this, I said to myself. What are the odds? So now what? You want me to make this guy's day and give him $100 for nothing? At that point, as in many others, a gentle voice came into my mind immediately to answer the question. You do not have to give him the $100, but you do have to give him the 10. He needs it. Very well, then. I looked again at the fortune. It seemed that not only did God have a sense of humor, but also a sense of style, too. It was the perfect amount of beat up and ancient looking, exactly what you would expect in a mysterious message. Ideal for Instagram, too, so I took a picture and profited from the lesson. I'll keep it forever, I said to myself, and tucked it safely into my pocket, making sure that its ancient look wasn't accidentally transformed into garbage by accident. As I slowly walked up to the valet stand, I noticed something was different. My guy, the one that I was supposed to be generous to, was nowhere to be seen. Instead, the young kid that had been there with him was left manning the station, and now we were suddenly back to square one. Hi, I began. Here's my valet ticket. Where's the other guy? The older one that was here just like 20 minutes ago. Oh, sorry, he replied. He stepped out for a little bit, but I can get your car for you, no worries. Okay, sure, I nodded reluctantly. Yeah, there are worries, buddy, because you're not the one I'm supposed to give the $10 to. A few more ordinary moments passed, and the kid pulled up in my car. It's decision time. I offered a half-baked smile in exchange for the car and began looking inside the center console to make myself appear busy. Yeah, just a second, I said, buying myself more time for the inevitable. What to do? I don't technically have to tip the kid. It's all complimentary, remember? You told me to give the guy $10 and he's not even here, for crying out loud. I couldn't stall forever, so I sighed and pulled the 10 out of my pocket and handed it to the kid through the passenger's window. Oh, wow, thank you, sir. You have a great day, he said, smiling genuinely and tucking the unexpected gift into his pocket before walking off. Hey, excuse me, I yelled just a few steps later. He turned around sharply and met my gaze like a deer in the headlights. Don't worry, kid, you didn't do anything wrong. Listen, I said, after running back up to him. Can you please just give that to the older guy who parked my car? Or, split it however you guys do it, but I really want to give it to him. He gave me really good service and I just want to thank him for it, even though I know this is complimentary. No offense to you or anything, I was just expecting him to be here. The kid looked at me blankly for a moment and then said, Yeah, sure, no problem, sir. I'll make sure to give it to him, thank you. I plopped myself back down in my car, reached into my left pocket, and gently pulled out the fortune. Then I glanced over at the constantly accruing pile of change I keep in the space between the gear stick and the center console, the space where drinks usually go. Over time, I'd made a habit of collecting change until it filled the entire cup holder, enough to cash it all in at one time and make it an exciting experience. It's a fun hoarding game, and it takes me back to my days as a toddler digging up bottle caps out of the ground in the park like they were some sort of magical treasure. I looked at my fortune and then back at the pile of change. If we give happiness to others, we will end up happy. An inspiration for a clever picture came into my mind, and I placed the fortune right on top of the money and immortalized the experience and the life lesson before driving off into the rest of my day. Follow the sign. "Hey, Tudor, we'll have to cancel tonight. Sorry about that. Maybe next week." Read a brief text from one of my dance students. Damn! Now I really don't have an excuse not to go to this thing. What was the thing, you ask? Well, I didn't know exactly, but it was something like a small expo for authors to learn about presenting, speaking, and selling their books. I had gotten in touch with the organizer through a random series of events, and now, having no excuse, thanks to an opening in my schedule, I decided to put my reluctance aside and give it the benefit of the doubt. At the very least, I figured I'd learn something. The venue was located nearly an hour away in rush hour traffic, and it didn't take long to begin regretting my decision. I'd been to so many of these kinds of things before, and they all turned out to be schmucky in one way or another. I really hope I'm wrong this time, I said to myself as I inched through miles of traffic. Maybe this is what red blood cells feel like in those diagrams of capillaries we used to learn about as kids in junior high science class. When I pulled into the location, I was surprised that I'd never seen the building in question before. It was in my old college stomping grounds, and yet it had been totally invisible until now. It was an older building, it was a little bit dilapidated, but thankfully, parking wasn't an issue, as was the case most of the time in that area. I looked around for signage, but saw nothing. So I decided to just walk inside and make myself at home. Upon entering, I saw a room full of empty chairs, some tables with booths set up, and a few people running around like busy bees tending to their tasks. One of them saw me enter, and we walked up to each other. "Hi, I'm here for the event tonight," I half stated and half questioned. "Oh yes, here, grab a name tag, fill it out, and we'll be starting shortly. We'll just wait for a few more to show up." "A few more?" I mused. "There's nobody here." I found it strange that I was the only one in the audience, but I shrugged it off. It was probably nothing, I thought. Name tag? Check. Water bottle? Check. Packet full of useless info that I'll make into paper airplanes later? Check. Time to sit down and make myself at home, I guess. About 45 minutes or so of more busyness passed. A few of the speakers held stage rehearsals, and still nobody showed up. There was a camera guy filming, and they told me to move because I was in the way based on where I was sitting. But aren't these chairs supposed to be for the audience anyway? It was all very strange. And when they finally decided to start the show 20 minutes late, it got even weirder. At that point, it was obvious that nobody else was coming, and that the whole thing was just staged for one reason or another. Why? I have no clue. Regardless, I felt that the presenters needed a lot of work in their delivery. And the fact that they were pretending that there was this giant audience for the camera just annoyed me even more. But because I'm an introvert, the awkwardness of just standing up to leave the nonsense paralyzed me, and I continued as the sole audience member to the charade unfolding in front of my eyes. I can't believe I drove out here for this. So much hype, and here we are again. That's right, again. I looked at the stack of papers I'd placed in the seat next to me and recalled all the countless times I'd applied for a job or a quote-unquote opportunity in college, only to drive over for an interview and waste my time by finding out it was an MLM scheme. Nearly 2 hours later, time was painfully dripping by with each presentation, and my annoyance was gaining critical mass. I was about to stand up and walk out. I had been debating coming to this thing, and my schedule got cleared to do so. I had followed my intuition, considering that to be a sign, and now I was sitting around wasting my day away. "Why did you bring me here?" I asked God. "What's my purpose? What do you want me to learn?" The great part about praying silently in your mind is that you can do it all day long without anyone knowing. At this event, I could probably complain out loud and nobody would notice, but that was besides the point. There was one more speaker, and I swore that if she was as bad as the others, within the first 3 sentences, I was done. Life is too short to be nice to everyone all the time, and maybe signs aren't signs at all, but just coincidences. "Okay, here we go," I quietly said to myself. I rubbed my eyes and pulled myself forward. One more benefit of the doubt, but that's it. Make it good, lady. The $10,000 speech. What happened moments later transformed my evening from being a total waste of time into yet another priceless life lesson on the journey with gratitude. Combined with the recency of my little tea fortune about a week or so before, these two experiences coordinated with yet untold parts of this story to deliver a powerful message about gratitude, generosity, and God. To me, the coincidence of these events cannot be ignored, and today, I'm convinced that God had his hand in it one way or another. What follows is true, strange, and a little funny. Around the time of attending this event, I was on a quest that may sound a little ill-motivated. My goal was to make $10,000 in 1 month. Why, do you ask? Well, it wasn't total greed and narcissism, but definitely some ambition in response to what I'd gone through with my old job. Recall that I had recently come out of a long stretch of working as a loyal employee, making someone else's dreams come true. When I found myself fired with barely a month of expenses saved up in my account, I decided that things had to change going forward. I had worked my tail off for years, and in the end, I had very little to show for it. For every $100 or so that was being charged per hour of my time, I would come out with maybe about 30 of it, and that's before taxes. That may sound like a decent wage, but being a professional dance instructor and competitor is an extremely demanding and undervalued position. I had to be a marriage therapist, a geisha, a clown, a personal trainer, a circus performer, a friend, and a salesman all in one. I was working my body from the morning until the late hours of the evening, throwing students around, and had to be ready on a moment's notice to smile, dance, and sell. On average, I would give about 50 to 60 hours a week to what I did, with no time for anything else, and eventually, I started to realize that this was a very uneven exchange on my part. Competing professionally was also a total racket, because the judges were trainers and owners of studios and competitions, and you had to play politics, which can get pretty expensive. I had a friend tell me once that he was spending about $50,000 a year just to stay relevant in the finals, between all the coaching and traveling and competitions and elbow rubbing that him and his partner were doing throughout the year. And that was just his part. About a year after he told me that, his partnership dissolved and it was back to the drawing board. All of these realizations had pressed on me pretty hard after getting fired. I had a financial wake-up call, so to speak, and realized that I had invested myself in the wrong things. I loved dancing, but taking all the measly money I made running a rat race and spending it to stay in that rat race was no way to plan for the future. Being in my mid-30s, questions of my freedom, my future, my time, and my happiness all knocked on the proverbial door and demanded resolution. It was time to take my finances and my freedom into my own hands, I thought. And now that I could run as far and as fast as I wanted to without anyone watching over my shoulder, I had to get moving and make up for lost time. This unexpected situation, although stressful in the short term, had catalyzed an important transition and motivated me to begin my life as an entrepreneur with haste and with hunger. The truth is that I am a natural entrepreneur because of my creativity, and also because of my total loathing of having anyone else tell me how to do things. I'm also tenacious and a perfectionist, so doing my own thing was always attractive. I had tried some business ideas when I got out of college, but nothing panned out, so I compromised and had, quote, normal jobs that all eventually drove me insane. Believe it or not, I even worked for the government, which is the last place I would ever work. When I got fired from my cushy Social Security Administration job, I experimented with entrepreneurship for another year and failed because I didn't have the right training. I also didn't have anyone to guide me, which is very important in anything. At the end of my rope and out of options, I found the studio I ended up slaving away 7 years out of my life to when a happenstance situation brought me there. After those 7 long years were over, I swore in my ambition that I was never going to worry about money ever again. I didn't know how or from whom, but I was going to make $10,000 in a single month and prove to myself that I could do it. And even better, I was going to do this by my 34th birthday, which was just in a few months. So as I sat through the final presentation of the evening, considering my $10,000 goal and the last several months, I thought, what a wild ride it's been, and what a wild ride it was becoming. I had indeed met my goal and made more money in a single month than I had at any other time in my life for the same period. I could eat sushi anytime I wanted and still have the time to do whatever I pleased. It was a milestone, a benchmark that gave me confidence in my abilities and confirmed that I was on the right track with my work. Because I believe our prosperity is directly linked to the value we provide others around us. So, if you do good work, it will show in your bank account, eventually. It is true that some selfish ambition was definitely present, but God uses all things for the good, even our foolishness, to reveal His glory in our lives. But now this final speaker was about to present, and I was ready to walk out of the place if she didn't razzle-dazzle me with insight and passion. As she finished her introduction and began putting forth her ideas, I found myself in a warm, relaxed moment of peace and focus. I was content with my achievements, but a nagging sense of now what pervaded the air after all of that introspection. Hearing a more intense, skilled tone in the presenter's voice, I decided to take a break from my own thoughts for a change and check into the moment at hand. What happened next was orchestrated beautifully. "Look, life is not about money," the speaker said passionately. "Even if you had some goal, some ridiculous goal, like let's say your goal was to make $10,000 in a single month or something, then what? What's the point if you aren't fulfilled? Life is about other people and your service to them. What we give is what really makes us wealthy." My eyes opened up like onions, and for the first time of that night, I made eye contact with the person on stage. The message was for me, and this entire shenanigan had been yet another cleverly orchestrated spiritual lesson. How on earth, I thought? What are the odds? The tea bag, and now this? Are you kidding me? This is going to go in a book someday. A boat, a flue, and a message. "And Yahweh will guide you continually and satisfy your desire in scorched places and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters do not fail." Isaiah 58:11. About 6 months after releasing this book in 2019, I experienced another meaningful event in my journey with gratitude. It was a pivotal moment on my path toward incorporating gratitude into my life, but more importantly, it was also a pivotal moment that drew me back to God. At the end of the year in December of 2019, right before the madness hit in the beginning of 2020, I was hired to go on a dance cruise by a group that a friend of mine had put together. I'd never been on a cruise before, and the opportunity to make some extra cash while I was usually doing nothing was enough to get me to try something new. A few days into the said cruise, I came down with what I think was probably one of the first cases of COVID, because there were many Europeans on the cruise, and most likely I had gotten something from across the ocean. It was totally horrible, and I wanted to die. I felt my immune system just raging, and all of my plans to teach and earn some money were dashed to smithereens. During the day, sometime into this unfortunate adventure, I decided to go up to the balconies and grab a snack, walk around, and just try to clear my mind. I was so angry and bitter at my circumstances that I just couldn't accept my situation. Scarcity was taking over my mind, and I wanted desperately to go home. Too bad. The sardine can of a room you're sharing with another dude is your home now, I thought. Forget sleep, and forget comfort, and for sure forget money, because you'll be sick for the rest of this cruise. What luck, I grumbled. While biding my time on the elevator to the top floors, I noticed a woman enter at one of the stops wearing a curious t-shirt. In fact, the design of the shirt was very plain. It was just a black shirt with a large Bible verse number, Isaiah 58:11, printed in white on the front. The contrast was just enough to catch my eyes and, in my state, keep me curious long enough to see if there was anything written on the back. Maybe the universe had a message for me that day, I thought. Eventually, she did turn around, and indeed there was something written. Where God guides, He provides. Although today I believe that God's choice to save someone has been determined before the ages, from our perspective we can identify meaningful moments when His plan unfolds in our lives. In some sense, it is always unfolding and every event is meaningful. But if I were to pick one in my own life, then I would say that this is the moment that God's seed of faith began to sprout. It was ironic that, by that point, my gratitude book had been out and I'd been promoting the principles actively on my podcast, private lessons, coaching sessions, and website. I had tracks on gratitude, I had led a retreat and several workshops on gratitude. I spoke to people about gratitude regularly, and yet here I was, miserable and relatively in the same spot I had been before doing all these things. Sure, my book and programs and content were getting out there and helping thousands of people, but something was missing, and that something was God. Despite all of my personal growth work, all of my effort and writing and supposed expertise on the topic of gratitude, I was still making the deadly mistakes I was warning others about on a regular basis. I was still attached to money. I was still in love with the world and driven by scarcity. I was still complaining and still very angry. I had no sense of faith because I had no true object of faith. My New Age beliefs and practices had made me idolize the universe, myself, and literally nothing, instead of the living God who created all things. And without an anchor of faith for gratitude, generosity, stillness, and all of the things that you'll learn in this book, it was an open door for the devil to deceive me back into old habits. Like most people today, my spirituality entailed no accountability other than to myself. I had followed the world's advice, and I was teaching the world back what it had taught me. It was a downward spiral of spiritual failure, despite spending thousands of dollars on personal growth, leading workshops, coaching dozens of clients, reading many books, and doing plenty of writing myself, as well as interviewing over 150 experts throughout the world on how to, quote, hack life for success and happiness. In the end, none of these things mattered. It was just the same old rat race everyone else was running around doing, but in a spiritual package. I say that this innocuous little event on the cruise was the day that God's seed of faith sprouted in my life, because it was the day I began to pivot away from all my selfish, New Age personal growth mentalities and actually acknowledge God again as a person in my life. Interestingly, while writing my 5th book, The Way Home, I went through an old journal I had put in storage and realized something very important. I was actually going to throw that journal away, but I think the Holy Spirit stopped me and made me look through it again so that I could see something very important. The journal started in the fall of 2016, shortly after I had ended my engagement with somebody that I had cared very much for. The person who motivated me to reach out to my first dance partner, Kay, and to make it right with her. That in turn began my journey with gratitude, and a year later, in 2016, that journey took on a whole new level when I broke off the engagement. It was painful, especially because the decision to bring it to an end wasn't something I necessarily wanted. Nevertheless, things had gotten so tense that it was what I needed in order to stay sane. We had just moved in together, which only made things worse, and after the fallout, the only choice I had was to practice a new mindset or spiral into misery. Indeed, it was this very journal that began my practice of gratitude in the first place, by helping me build a habit of writing and reflecting on what I was grateful for. This eventually led to a blog, then a podcast, a book, a course, organizing events, and eventually a whole new life as an author and, quote, personal growth expert. As I looked through the journal and read a few of my old entries, I saw something that I didn't expect. In many of my reflections, I expressly thanked God or even the Lord for my life and for the many blessings that He'd given to me. I couldn't believe it. I had totally forgotten that God was actually a big part of my life for many years. Despite going to college and forgetting about religion, despite being entrenched in the materialistic and vain dance industry, despite having my share of the party life, God was still the one I went to in my time of trouble, and He was still the one I thanked when I began my journey with gratitude. He was the source and also the anchor of it all. Unfortunately, every good thing that God does in our lives is immediately attacked by the enemy in an attempt to subvert it. This is described in Jesus' famous parable of the sower in Matthew 13. Because I hadn't been born again at the time, my practice of gratitude was slowly and patiently diverted into something self-serving. My old relationship had devoured my identity and also my free time, so the newfound freedom allowed me to reconnect to things that I hadn't done in many years, like playing the piano, writing, speaking, and doing creative projects. But because God and Scripture weren't at the center of my life as the anchor, these pursuits eventually engrossed me into worshiping the world, worshiping myself, and worshiping nothing through New Age philosophies. Over the ensuing years, up until that fateful day on the cruise in 2019, I drifted away from God as the object of my faith and into increasingly more dangerous waters. God became the universe and eventually my higher self, who was giving me downloads so that I could find spiritual enlightenment. Drugs like weed, ecstasy, and psychedelics only made these lies even more real, and having friends, success, money, and good experiences made the journey I was on feel right and fulfilling. But despite this good-looking outside, my spiritual life was a whitewashed tomb. I did not have a new heart, and I did not have Jesus Christ. Today I look back on these and other periods of my life, and I'm stricken with awe and gratitude that the Lord did not let me die in my sins and foolishness, but instead continued to nurture me even as I rebelled and walked in the opposite direction. The simple message on that lady's shirt in the elevator was, like all things God does, perfectly timed. One of my friends, Ruben, told me once that when you hit rock bottom, you realize that God is that rock at the bottom. Perhaps that is why the Bible refers to him in this way countless times. Nevertheless, the Bible also says that faith comes from hearing the word. That's in Romans 10, verse 17. And I believe this also applies to reading, since you hear the word in your head when you read. When I read that Bible verse on that t-shirt about God providing and God guiding, I began to believe again. The jolt of this event came at the perfect time to realign my life back to where it needed to be. Because New Age personal growth wisdom can only get you so far. The message that rescued me that day wasn't some hippie mantra like, believe in yourself, or the universe loves you. Rather, it was the truth. The truth that I was taken care of, guided, and given everything that I needed by a personal, loving, and all-powerful being who created me for a purpose. There was intention in my life, and that intention had a conscious source who wanted a relationship with me. I realized that day that the universe didn't care about my life. God cared. God was the provider, and He had been there all along. Over the course of my life, I had experienced multiple near-death experiences, like almost being run over by a train or being a few feet away from a gang shootout, debilitating anxiety attacks and an eating disorder. Being so poor in college, I slept on a mattress I bought off of Craigslist that had blood and other stains on it. Serious abdominal surgeries, and walking around with a colostomy bag for 2 months, hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, SIBO, adrenal fatigue, insomnia, depression, and burnout. A violent gang breaking into my home, assaulting me and robbing my stuff, being cheated on and betrayed multiple times, being backstabbed by an employer who I considered a friend, being threatened with a lawsuit, and having to sell all of my things multiple times. On and on and on. In all of these moments, and many others like them, it was always God who I turned to instinctively. When I had to have emergency abdominal surgery as a kid in the boonies of Romania, and they had to give me a spinal tap, God was there. When I almost choked to death, He was there too. When gangsters drove past me one night flashing their gun, I felt the Holy Spirit's hand move my head away gently so that I wouldn't make eye contact with them so that they could keep driving. God was always there, from before I was born to every good day and every day that I was at rock bottom. He was who I needed to turn to, just like I had instinctively done at every serious point in my life in the past. He would always make sure that I had everything I needed, and there was nothing to worry about other than developing and maintaining my relationship with Him. The adventure never ends. Since the event on that cruise ship in 2019, many other things happened that incrementally brought me closer to God, tested my faith, and deepened my practice of gratitude. In 2020, I lost whatever remained of my dance business due to this scamdemic, and I got into debt pivoting into a new direction of doing things online. In 2021, I got scammed out of all my life savings, and I lost everything, coming to Jesus broken, bankrupt, and humiliated. About 6 months later, in early 2022, I lost my voice for 9 months and I did nothing, with the exception of writing my 5th book, The Way Home. Later in 2022, I began my YouTube channel and I started recording my first series, the End Time Series, a 70-hour comprehensive series with 36 episodes focused on what the Bible has to say about the times that we're living in. It was painful because my voice was still healing and I slogged through it. I wasn't making any money from my YouTube channel or anything I was doing. And that was fine because I was just doing it to help people and improve my own presentation skills. From 2022 to 2023, I lost whatever measly money I did make from the odd jobs that I was doing because despite getting the pants scammed off of me in 2021, I still didn't quite learn my lesson. I listened to the wrong people and put my faith in the wrong things again, namely magical crypto money. And for the entirety of this period, I was living off just enough to get food and gas. By late 2023, I moved my website and podcast to Substack, mainly to save money from recurring monthly fees. And at the beginning of 2024, I started to get paying subscribers to my work. At that time, I was making enough to grab a few burritos per month as a reward, But by the end of 2024, I was making more money than I had ever made teaching dancing, yet with much less stress and much more freedom and joy. In 2025, I opened the Dance of Life podcast merch store, and today I am exceedingly grateful for all that God has done for me since. He has always provided, always been gracious, and always taken care of me. It has been 10 years since I sat down with Kay and began my journey with gratitude, with many fateful messages throughout this period that all serve their purpose to humble me, provide me with wisdom, and ultimately to draw me closer to God. The original book that I wrote had some wonderfully practical advice, but it was missing the most important part. This time, we're going to do it right, because God is the source of gratitude, generosity, abundance, stillness, and everything in between. You will learn many simple and timeless techniques in the ensuing chapters, as well as special little nuggets of wisdom that I've acquired over the years through the various experiences that I've just relayed to you. Enjoy these things, but what matters most is that you learn about God and that this book, like my meeting with Kay, like my broken engagement, like my journal, like my tea message, like the $10,000 speech, like the t-shirt on that cruise, like all of these things, what matters is that this book serves its purpose to be a faithful message in your own life as those things were in mine. I hope it inspires you and also prompts you to check in with yourself for anything that needs resolution, because we often avoid and run away from important conflicts that need to be had. May what you learn edify you and strengthen you in the challenging days ahead, and may you never forget that where God guides, He always provides, and God is always guiding. The Biggest Trap. This book, as you already know by now, is about gratitude. Implicitly, it is also about other things that gratitude relates to, like generosity, abundance, and stuff you've undoubtedly heard about on Oprah, seen in your daily motivational quote feed, or read in many self-development books. There is nothing terribly new in that respect. But you could also say there's nothing terribly new about breathing, and yet we need to do it every moment to experience life. It is vital and absolutely necessary, and I believe that the same can be said of gratitude. I decided to share the previous stories with you because they provide us with an excellent starting point for this book's journey. When I had set out to reach my $10,000 per month goal, and consequently made it, I achieved an important milestone that returned my confidence and motivated me to be ever more successful in my new life as an entrepreneur. It was what I needed at the time, given the circumstances, but it was also a Pyrrhic victory, an empty conquest. I had no real appreciation for money or wealth, and my values were still pointed in the wrong direction. It took a few more years after that experience to lose everything, and then regain it one step at a time to have a deeper understanding and appreciation for true abundance, which is not dependent on income. Nevertheless, these types of external benchmarks can be valuable because they provide us with the framework to grow, change, and strive beyond what is comfortable. For you, it may be something else, like getting a promotion, having a big family, finding someone you love, or paying off your house or student loans. Regardless of what that current goal is, your benchmarks for success are what drive you forward and inspire you to act on many fronts. As your values mature, these benchmarks will also change, but having benchmarks and goals is an important part of life. Yet, it's also these very goals that can set us up for the biggest trap. Once a vision and its subsequent goals have been set into the mind, we invest our resources, we push, we sweat, cry, and hopefully do whatever it takes to get there because that future reality is totally worth it. But despite the tantalizing reward that our mind so expertly paints for us, the road to this future picture is one rife with challenges, failure, and many obstacles. Regardless of what you want, it will take effort and sacrifice to get there, and the odds are not stacked in your favor. Reality's very nature is to offer you resistance so that you may in turn appreciate the view once you get there. What this all adds up to is that, regardless of how inspiring your goal is, it's inevitable to get distracted, lost, stressed, angry, and want to quit many times along the way. Sometimes we push so hard towards something that, when we finally get it, it doesn't even feel like our mind promised it would. It is a meaningless event, like everything else mundane, because something important got lost along the way. This is the biggest trap. It is finding yourself obtaining what you wanted to and worked desperately for, only to arrive and to not want it anymore. It is empty success, because it is success that is devoid of fulfillment and ultimately devoid of God. In my many years of working as a teacher and a coach, I've had the fortune of meeting many very well-to-do and successful people from all walks of life. I'm grateful that God gave me the ability to observe those with much more than me and their attitudes on life, reminding me firsthand of the biggest trap that we're all in danger of as we continually strive for higher and higher benchmarks in a world of plenty. Some of these people had obtained success by most standards and yet lacked a fundamental enjoyment of life, being caught in the swamp of obstacles that you'll soon explore in this book. Some had earned their way there and were burned out as a result. Others who came by this success in much easier ways suffered equally because resistance had not played its part in shaping their sense of appreciation. In my own life, the timing of that speech could not have been more appropriate to remind me of this very important lesson. As I entered a new chapter of limitless possibility working for myself, I went on full attack mode to chase my dream of obtaining financial freedom and creating impact in the world with my ideas. Life was short, and I felt that I had already wasted my time by having nothing to show for it, according to the arbitrary timeline I had established in my mind as a measure of success. All in all, my sense of urgency had been put on overdrive, and I developed tunnel vision for the future pictures my mind had painted in this new chapter of freedom. I thought I was going to take advantage of every minute and get done what I needed to get done because it was all on me now. In my ambition, I turned away from gratitude, and I turned away from God. Does this sound familiar to you in any way? With great freedom also comes great responsibility. This means that the wonderful goals you choose for yourself must also be vigilantly nourished and supported, as well as being pursued and acted upon. Both are important. We nurture our lives with a daily gratitude practice that is anchored in God, and we take action with discipline and a desire for excellence. Both of these frames of mind are needed, but one is easily forgotten in the hustle of everyday life and chasing what is important. I had spent countless dollars and hours on personal growth programs, books, seminars, and so on, learning to up my game and obtain success. Still, I had gotten away from the basic habits of gratitude and appreciation that I knew were valuable for nurturing the journey and avoiding the biggest trap of success without fulfillment. I had also gotten away from God, and without God, these things easily become self-serving, empty, and dead. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? For what can a man give in return for his soul? Mark 8:36-37. Here is an important reminder of what we are after in this book. Life, success, and anything that you have or will ever achieve are meaningless if you cannot appreciate the ride there. Even more important are Jesus' words in Mark 8:36-37. Because there is nothing we can ever achieve that would make a difference in what truly matters, which is eternal life. In this regard, the gospel gives us the foundation for gratitude, because this achievement has already been made for us by Jesus Christ, and it's a source of hope, joy, and appreciation regardless of our earthly circumstances. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. These days, science is affirming timeless wisdom and giving gratitude more weight than just a cute and trendy personal growth hack. From worker motivation and productivity, to its benefits in psychotherapeutic and behavioral settings, all the way into the realm of relationships, intimacy, and physical health. The practice of gratitude is a far-reaching, key component of a well-lived life. For the nerdy and curious alike, a few studies emerging from this exciting new field of research have been included in the appendix of this book, titled The Science of Gratitude. But here's the main point. There's no magic formula and no secret trick to success and fulfillment. You've heard this before. To be happy, you just have to be grateful. And as you strive for higher and higher skies, remember that the very nature of what makes you move forward is that there's something missing. That something could be more than what it is now. This is not a bad thing inherently, but it must be balanced with a regular habit of appreciation. Otherwise, you will inevitably get lost to the momentum of chasing and doing, losing sight of what is not missing, what is there, and what you already have. A practice of gratitude is then the other side of the coin for our busy and success-driven lives. It is how we avoid the biggest trap, and it is a must, a daily vitamin that we need to take along with all the others like discipline, patience, faith, and a few more you'll be reintroduced to in this book. Again, there's nothing terribly new here. Gratitude is simple, easy, powerful, and yet so quickly forgotten. No surprise, since also drinking enough water, breathing correctly, standing up straight, flossing, and eating your vegetables are in the same category of important things that go by the wayside until there's suddenly a crisis. My goal with this book and project is then a preventative one, to make sure that you do not have that future crisis by helping you to develop the habits and skills necessary to avoid the biggest trap, and in the process, to reconnect to the source of it all, which is God. The message. I hope that wherever this message finds you, it is with an open heart. This book is a collection of the most time-honored and powerful strategies that have made a difference in my own ability to practice the habit of gratitude. But they are just interesting ideas at best if dismissed as totally familiar. I want you to see it all newly, and more importantly, to see the message behind this message. In the same way that all of those fateful messages serve their purpose in making me see something new, I know that there is something in here for you that will ring absolutely true for where you are right now, and that it will make a difference. The words themselves are rarely as significant as the timing, so I hope that this book and its resources will serve as an invaluable, well-timed reminder to you of what really matters most. It's now time to prepare for your amazing journey ahead. In the next chapter, we are going to pull the gratitude map out and examine it in its entirety, surveying the landscape and a few important tools that we'll be using throughout its many destinations. I believe that, although you have encountered some of these places before, the itinerary itself will be a totally novel and fun experience. It is my goal with this pervasive metaphor of an adventure through different areas to help you discover unique life lessons from points that you previously may have explored, while simultaneously uncovering totally new and scenic perspectives that you may not have even been aware of. Thank you for allowing me to be your partner on this wonderful adventure. I am grateful to be able to share my version of this timeless message with you, and my hope is that upon its completion, you will want to share it with someone else too. Just like that presenter who changed my life through her generosity and being vulnerable on stage. I hope that this little book inspires you to be more grateful, kind, brave, and generous with all of those around you. I also hope that it helps you reconnect to God as the source of appreciation in your life. This is the message behind the message, and it is also the ultimate destination of this never-ending adventure. Surveying the map. We are almost ready to start, but like with any adventure, it's important to scout the path ahead in its entirety. Part of the charm of our little journey here lies in the metaphors that it offers, giving life and visual structure to an otherwise philosophical and amorphous terrain. I am a strong believer in using metaphors because our mind works in pictures. I'm also a visual person, and I love it when things can be seen and interacted with. To this end, I have crafted our journey ahead with several metaphors and destinations, each serving as a tool to deliver the ultimate goal of inspiring permanent change through a memorable association to something physical. I have also hired a great artist, Douglas, to illustrate these things and give them life so that you truly feel like you're going on an adventure with challenges, treasures, and scenic views. I believe that if you can see the following chapters as places we visit together on a map, each with their distinct features and relationships to other places in a realm of some kind, as well as the entirety of the experience from point A to point B as an adventure, then you will never forget it. That's the goal. What matters is that this information makes its way into your life, and what better way for that to be the case than to feel like you've discovered new things on a recent exploration. If you have an adventurous spirit, and I think you do, then get ready for the ultimate adventure, a trip through the murky world of the mind. This is our territory in the gratitude map, and to navigate it successfully, we must start by calibrating the most important tool, the compass. The compass. To reliably get to where you want to go, you will need a dependable compass, a tool that objectively and consistently maintains the destination and your relationship to it at all times. In this journey, your compass represents your awareness. The direction a compass points is the direction you travel, and in the same way, the direction you focus your awareness is also the direction you will travel through life. Also, you can see from the branding that I've used with this project, the compass has a G in the middle to represent the center that grounds everything you do. That G stands for God, because God is the source of true appreciation, gratitude, generosity, and fulfillment in everything we do. This clever symbol summarizes the journey in its entirety. Of all the places you'll visit and things you'll learn in the gratitude map, I hope that you'll remember through this simple visual aid to be a good navigator and always find your way back home by remembering He who always guides you and provides for you. The swamp. The swamp is a metaphor for the state of being that we find ourselves in when we are out of touch with the grateful state and really out of touch with God. There are several obstacles that collectively form this negative state of being, and they're inevitable because they're part of life. It's much more about learning to be a good navigator, hence the compass, rather than being able to avoid it completely. In this part of the journey, you will not only become familiar with these diverse obstacles, but also their hidden gifts and life lessons, giving you the skills to make your way out when you find yourself stuck and to come back even stronger by recognizing things that you can appreciate, even when facing the recurring problems that life has to throw at you. The cabin. After we clear the swamp, we'll find an open area and begin building your cabin. In this case, the cabin represents your daily gratitude practice. To make a real cabin, you have to chop wood and work, but in the end, it rewards you with warmth, safety, and protection from the rigors of the wild. In the same way, your metaphorical cabin will be constructed from a collection of 13 of the most powerful habits for creating a daily gratitude practice, and the wood that you chop every day by committing to this practice for life. It's your sturdy home that you can return to when life's changing weather, or the swamp, encroach on your sense of appreciation, sanity, or health. Be diligent in building and maintaining the cabin, and it will serve you in return, offering a lifetime of reward through the habits you choose to practice on a daily basis. The secret weapon. Hidden somewhere in plain sight is the secret weapon. Once we construct your cabin and have a stable place to use as a base camp, it will be time to go hunting for this powerful tool. What is it exactly? You will soon find out, but it is the perfect complement to your daily gratitude practice. Through its mastery, you can unlock the power of the virtuous cycle for your benefit, providing you with a lifetime formula for living in a grateful mindset and contributing to others' lives meaningfully. The 3 pillars. Our final destination turns the focus outward to those around you. After building your cabin and training with the secret weapon, you will have everything at your disposal to establish the 3 pillars of abundant relationships with others. While most of this journey is about you and dealing with what's within, this final leg is about everybody else. With mastery over this final part, you will end this journey and simultaneously begin a new one, spreading what you learn to everyone you encounter and reaping the benefits in return.